So we're going to talk about trust. Okay, this sounds so obvious, I know. What's this American guy talking? Well, you need to trust each other if you want to build a team. I mean, that's so ridiculously, patently obvious, I know. But here's the thing about trust that people sometimes struggle with. When I talk about trust on a leadership team, I'm not talking about predictive trust. Predictive trust is what happens when people have known each other for a number of years, and they can pretty much say, well, I trust him or her because I've known her, and I know that if I say this, this is how she's going to react. Okay? We can predict one another's behaviors. We can trust how that other person is going to behave. That's not the kind of trust that makes a team great. The kind of trust that I'm talking about is what I call vulnerability-based trust. Vulnerability-based trust is the kind of trust that comes about when people on a team can and will genuinely say things to one another like, I don't know the answer. I need help. I think I made a mistake. Man, you're way smarter than I am about that. Can you teach me how to do what you do? Or even, I'm sorry, I was kind of a jerk yesterday and I feel bad for that. I was just in a bad place. When people can be that emotionally buck naked with one another, it changes everything on a team. And of all those 4 disciplines I talked about and all these 5 dysfunctions and all the things I teach in my practice, one of the first things I say is this: trust is at the basis of all of this. And if we cannot build vulnerability-based trust on our teams, the ceiling for our success is going to be very, very low. So how do we do that? What does that trust look like? Well, I'm going to take you through a couple of exercises that don't cost a lot of time and take a lot of money. And cost a lot of time and take a lot of money, take a lot of time and cost a lot of money. So, but I want to talk about what this looks like on a team. So years ago, I worked with a team and they were having some issues. So they called me in to work with the team and they let me observe one of their staff meetings before I did a 2-day offsite with the executive team. And during that staff meeting, I noticed something peculiar that was going on. There was one person on the team. She was the head of marketing. It doesn't matter if it was a she or the head of marketing. There's no consistency with that. But whenever somebody would debate during the meeting, they get into a discussion about what they should be doing in the market with strategy. And they'd be going back and forth and having a pretty good debate. And then she would say, well, this is what we did when I was at SAP or whatever company she was at. And everybody would go silent. It was like a complete buzzkill to the conversation. And they would change the subject and start talking about something else. And they would be like, well, I think we should do this. What about this? What about this? And then she would say, here's what I think. And it would go silent. And it was strange that she would bring a halt to the conversation. And so after the meeting, I went to one of the people on the team and I said, what's going on there? Why does she always stop the conversation? And somebody said very honestly, they said, because we've come to realize whenever she weighs in, if we disagree with her, she never changes her mind. She never admits maybe she's wrong. Maybe there's better information out there. Maybe there's something else. So when she weighs in, we kind of go, well, that's probably the end of any productive dialogue here. So I thought that was strange. So a couple of weeks later, we did our first offsite for this executive team. And we talked about trust and we talked about vulnerability, but we also talked about the other dysfunctions and strategy of the team and clarity and all those other things. And after the first day of the 2-day offsite, we went to dinner. It was an Italian restaurant. I remember it well. And we had wine with dinner. And after dinner, this woman had had a little too much wine, which was a good thing in this case, because she stood up at the end of dinner like she was going to make a toast. And we all got quiet. And she said, hey, everybody. She was a little tipsy. She said, we've been talking about trust and vulnerability today. And I just want you to know I've been married for 10 years now. And I've just barely learned to trust my husband this year. So I'm not going to be trusting you guys anytime soon, if ever. Cheers. And we were like, did she just say that out loud? We were like, cheers. Thank you. I went outside with the CEO, also a woman, and she and I stood outside the restaurant afterward and we said, this is the issue, isn't it? This is why nobody can have the conversation with her. And though we didn't decide right then and there to let her go, we said, let's focus on trying to get this woman to open up and be more vulnerable. We tried for too long. And it became very clear that in this case, she was not going to change. It was really embedded in her. I'm sure childhood wounds and all kinds of things. And so finally, after months of working with her, the CEO managed her off the team. And do you know the very next meeting they had without her there, the quality of the conversations, the quality of the decisions, like Jim Collins said, went through the roof. It was like, I would have thought, had I never seen them before, that they had swapped out every member of the old team for a new one, because one person being gone that couldn't be vulnerable changed the dynamic completely. And that's the moral of this story. No one's perfect, but they have to be vulnerable. And if you have a person on your team who can't say, I think I'm wrong, or you have a better idea than mine, or I need help, or that was my fault, or I'm sorry, I mess up sometimes and I need to apologize. When people cannot do that, it limits the honesty of the conversation and the quality of the decision making. That kind of vulnerability is critical